Hey, truth seekers, welcome back to Hidden Truths, true crime stories where every story hides a secret, and every truth demands to be uncovered. Today's story will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love and loyalty. A mother, a daughter, and a secret that destroyed them both. This is the story of a forbidden affair that led to a mysterious death. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening in Maplewood, New Jersey. The kind of evening where porch lights blinked on at dusk and the scent of freshly cut grass drifted through quiet streets. The Patterson house, a two-story colonial at the end of Willow Creek Drive, looked like every postcard of suburban perfection. Inside, laughter mixed with the clinking of wine glasses. Elaine Patterson moved gracefully around the dining room, adjusting candles she'd already straightened twice. At 44, she was the woman every neighbor admired, poised, generous, unfailingly polite. Yet behind her practiced smile was a restlessness no one saw. Her husband, Mark, spent most weeks traveling for work. Her daughter, Chloe, 23, had just gotten engaged to a charming young lawyer named Evan Brooks. Tonight's dinner was meant to celebrate that engagement. From the outside, they looked perfect. Inside, small fractures waited beneath the surface, invisible until the right pressure would make them split wide open. "Mom, you're fussing again," Chloe laughed, adjusting the silverware. "I just want everything to look nice," Elaine replied, forcing cheer into her voice. She turned toward Evan, handsome, self-assured, and far too attentive. Their eyes met for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Something flickered there, something both of them quickly pretended hadn't happened. As dinner began, conversation filled the room. Wedding plans, venues, flowers. Evan joked easily, making everyone laugh. But every time Elaine spoke, he listened with an intensity that unsettled her. The more she tried to ignore it, the more she felt drawn to it. That dangerous pull of being truly seen after years of feeling invisible. Later, as she carried dessert plates into the kitchen, she caught her reflection in the window, a woman smiling but not happy. Behind her, Evan appeared in the doorway, offering to help. Their hands brushed when he passed her a dish. Static, quick, electric, shameful. Neither said a word. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the roof. It felt cleansing, almost symbolic, though neither of them knew what needed cleansing yet. When the evening ended, Chloe kissed her mother good night. Evan lingered at the door, his voice low. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, for everything." Elaine nodded, but when she closed the door, her pulse wouldn't slow. She leaned against the wood, eyes shut, whispering to herself, "Don't be ridiculous." The next morning, Maplewood woke to a crisp sunrise. Sprinklers hissed, mailboxes creaked open, and the Patterson home looked as peaceful as ever. But Marie Dalton, Elaine's best friend from across the street, noticed something odd. Elaine's curtains were still drawn. No movement inside. She sent a quick text. "Everything okay?" No reply. Marie smiled to herself. Elaine was probably sleeping in after hosting. Yet somewhere deep down she felt a chill, the kind that whispers something's not right. As days passed, neighbors would recall this night. The way laughter carried from the Patterson house, the rain that fell, the strange stillness that followed. They'd replay it all, searching for the moment when perfection began to crumble. Because in Maplewood, secrets never stayed buried for long, and soon, an innocent thank you would spiral into a web of guilt, desire, and betrayal. One that would destroy everything the Patterson family once stood for. It began with a dinner invitation, the kind that looks innocent on the surface, but in hindsight feels like the first domino falling. A month before the tragedy, the Patterson family was glowing. Chloe had just gotten engaged, the town adored them, and for once, Elaine felt her life was back in motion. The house buzzed with excitement, filled with phone calls, laughter, and endless lists of wedding plans. To celebrate, Chloe planned an intimate engagement dinner, just family, close friends, and of course, Evan Brooks, the man who'd swept her off her feet. The invitations were printed in gold script, the kind Elaine used to love designing herself. That night, the Patterson home looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Strings of lights framed the patio. Soft jazz played from a speaker in the corner, and the smell of roast chicken filled the air. Elaine wore navy silk, elegant but understated. She wanted everything perfect for her daughter, but when Evan arrived, something shifted. He hugged Chloe, kissed her cheek, then turned to Elaine, and for a brief second, his gaze lingered. Too long. Too knowing. The evening flowed smoothly, but underneath the smiles, something else began, an invisible thread between them. Evan laughed at Elaine's jokes, poured her wine, listened when she spoke. It was harmless, or so it seemed, but guilt often begins as something you tell yourself isn't real. Hours later, after the guests had gone, Chloe and Evan helped clean up. Elaine insisted she could handle the rest. Evan hesitated. "At least let me take out the trash," he said with a smile that was too easy, too confident. When he returned, rain had started falling. He stood by the doorway, shaking water from his hair. Elaine handed him a towel, their fingers brushing for a second. She froze. He did too. The air changed, thick with something unspoken. Elaine looked away first. "You should go. Chloe's waiting." Evan nodded, but before leaving, he turned back. "You know," he said softly. "Chloe gets her kindness from you." It was nothing, a simple compliment. But the way he said it, it stayed with her long after he was gone. Later that night, Elaine couldn't sleep. The rain tapped against the window, steady and relentless. She sat by her desk and opened her old leather journal, something she hadn't touched in years. Her pen hovered before she finally wrote, "It felt good to be seen again. I don't know why I feel guilty for that." The next few days blurred together. Evan stopped by more often, bringing small things. A missing recipe, a bouquet for Chloe, a bottle of wine he thought Elaine might like. They'd talk in the kitchen, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. Every time, Elaine told herself it was harmless. Every time, it got harder to believe that lie. One evening, as twilight fell, Marie dropped by unexpectedly. She caught a glance of Elaine and Evan talking too closely near the kitchen counter. Nothing inappropriate, but enough to leave questions. After he left, Marie asked, "You okay? You seem different." Elaine smiled weakly. "I'm fine, just tired." But Marie noticed the way her friend's hands trembled when she poured the tea. Outside, the wind picked up again, bending the trees, rattling the windows. Elaine stared at the rain, the same rain that fell the night everything started, and whispered to herself, "What am I doing?" The answer wouldn't come for weeks, and by the time it did, it would be far too late to undo. Thunder rolled across Maplewood that night, shaking the windows of 212 Willow Creek Drive. Rain hammered the pavement like a warning no one could hear in time. Inside, the lights were dim. Elaine sat on the couch with a half-empty glass of wine, her heart a storm of guilt and confusion. Evan stood by the window, watching the rain trace down the glass. No one spoke. The silence between them had grown heavy, dangerous. "We can't keep doing this," Elaine whispered finally. "Then tell me to stop," Evan said. His voice was low, almost pleading. She looked up, eyes shining. "I already did, but she hadn't. Not really." He took a step closer. Then another. It wasn't love. It was loneliness disguised as something deeper. When he touched her face, she didn't pull away. And that's when the front door opened. The sound was small, a soft creak, the kind you only notice when you're doing something you shouldn't. Elaine turned. Chloe stood frozen in the doorway, her umbrella dripping water onto the hardwood floor. Her eyes darted from her mother to Evan, and back again. For a moment, no one breathed. "Chloe," Elaine began, her voice cracking. Evan stepped back, guilt flooding his face. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. But the words were meaningless. The truth was already written across their faces. The engagement ring slid from Chloe's trembling hand and hit the floor with a sound louder than thunder. She ran out into the storm, barefoot, sobbing, her cries swallowed by the rain. Elaine chased her to the porch. "Chloe, please, listen to me." But Chloe didn't stop. She disappeared into the dark street, leaving her mother standing alone, soaked and shaking. Inside, Evan muttered, "I'll talk to her. I'll fix this." Elaine turned to him, voice trembling with anger. "You've done enough," he hesitated. "You wanted this too." That single sentence cut deeper than any knife. "Get out," Elaine said. "Get out and don't come back." Evan left without another word. His car headlights flashed across the rain-slicked driveway, then vanished. Elaine collapsed to her knees, sobbing into her hands. Everything she had tried to protect, her family, her reputation, her daughter, was gone. When morning came, the house was silent. The photos on the walls, wedding pictures, family vacations, birthdays, felt like relics of another life. Marie stopped by after hearing the shouting the night before. She found Elaine in the kitchen, her eyes red and swollen. "Elaine, what happened?" Marie asked gently. Elaine just shook her head. "I've lost her, Marie. I've lost everything." Marie reached for her hand. "You can still make it right. Tell her the truth. Tell her why." But Elaine looked away. "Some truths only make things worse." Later that evening, as the rain faded, she sat alone at her desk, writing in her journal. Her pen moved slowly, almost painfully. "I thought I could control this. I thought no one would get hurt. But secrets have a way of destroying everything you love." A faint sound interrupted her thoughts, a creak upstairs. She froze, listening. Then another sound, footsteps. Elaine's heartbeat quickened. "Chloe?" she called out softly. No answer. When she went to check, the hallway was empty. She told herself it was just the old house settling. But when she returned, the journal was open to a blank page. And on it, written in unfamiliar handwriting, were 5 chilling words. "You can't hide what you did." The clock read 2:17 a.m. when Elaine woke up to the sound of glass shattering. For a moment, she thought it was thunder again. But the storm had passed hours ago. The night outside was silent, dead silent. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up her pale face in the darkness. She dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? "There's someone in my house." Her whisper barely carried over the line. The operator's voice was calm, methodical. "Ma'am, stay on the phone." "Are you alone in the residence?" "Yes," Elaine breathed. "I think they're upstairs." She moved quietly down the hallway, her bare feet making no sound against the cold floorboards. The air smelled faintly of rain and fear. "Can you describe what you hear, ma'am?" "Footsteps. Slow. Like they're waiting for me to come closer." Her voice cracked on the last word. She pressed herself against the wall, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Every creak of the old house now felt alive, watching her, mocking her. "Stay where you are. Officers are on their way," the operator assured. "Please hurry," she whispered. "Please," then a silence. The footsteps stopped. Elaine dared to peek into the living room. Nothing. The curtains fluttered slightly in the open window, raindrops glistening on the sill. She exhaled shakily. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe she was losing her mind. And then, from the reflection in the window, a shadow moved behind her. She turned. No one. Just the dark, empty room staring back. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She sank onto the couch, tears streaking down her face. "Ma'am, are you still there?" "Yes, I think they're gone." But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. Minutes later, flashing red and blue lights flooded the front yard. 2 Maplewood officers entered cautiously, guns drawn. They swept the rooms, checked the windows, the back door, the basement. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. No one. When the lead officer returned, Elaine was still gripping her phone. "Ma'am, the house is clear," he said gently. "No one's here." Elaine looked at him, eyes wide. "Then who wrote it?" He frowned. "Wrote what?" She led him to the desk in the corner. The journal lay open, the same page from before. But now the words were gone, completely erased. Blank, Elaine's face drained of color. "It was here," she insisted. Someone wrote, "You can't hide what you did." The officers exchanged glances, that look people give when they're not sure whether to believe you or to pity you. One of them, Officer Daniels, spoke softly. Ma'am, maybe you've been under a lot of stress lately? Elaine stared at the page. Was she losing her mind? Had grief and guilt finally crossed into madness? She didn't answer. When the police left, the house fell silent again. The ticking clock sounded like a countdown. Elaine locked every window, every door. But as she turned off the lights, something caught her eye. A faint shape outside, standing by the tree line. A man, watching. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. And just as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. Elaine whispered into the dark. "Evan?" No answer. Only the echo of her own voice. She sank to the floor, shaking. For the first time, she wished Chloe would call. But her phone stayed silent, and outside, unseen, someone's shadow lingered against the glass, as if waiting for the lights to go out again. Morning light crept through the blinds, pale and cold. Elaine hadn't slept. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The refrigerator hum, the pipes, the whisper of wind through the trees. But nothing was louder than the ringing of her phone, unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Silence. "Who is this?" A faint static hissed through the line, followed by a voice, distorted, low and slow. "You can't hide forever." The call ended. Elaine froze. Her fingers trembled as she tried calling back, but the number wasn't real. "No longer in service," the automated voice said. She sank into a chair, heart pounding. Maybe it was a cruel prank. Maybe Chloe... But no. Chloe wouldn't. She hadn't even answered Elaine's texts in 3 days. Then came the second call. Same number. Same silence. Only this time the voice whispered, "You took what wasn't yours." Elaine dropped the phone. The words echoed through the empty kitchen like a curse. By noon, she drove to the Maplewood Police Department. Officer Daniels met her in the lobby. He listened patiently as she explained, but his expression stayed careful, too careful. "You're saying someone's harassing you?" "Yes, calling from numbers that don't exist." "Watching the house." "Leaving messages?" Daniels jotted something in his notebook. "And you said before you think someone broke in?" Elaine nodded. "They were inside, I'm sure of it." He sighed. "We'll put in a report, but without evidence. There's not much we can do." That phrase, "not much we can do," felt like a wall slamming shut. When Elaine returned home, a small white envelope was waiting on the porch. No name. No stamp. Her stomach twisted as she picked it up. Inside was a single photo. It was taken from outside her house, through her living room window. She was asleep on the couch. Written in red ink at the bottom were the same words, "You can't hide what you did." Elaine stumbled back, nearly dropping it. She looked around. The quiet neighborhood suddenly felt sinister. Every curtain, every parked car felt like it was watching. She went inside, locking the door behind her, her breath shallow. That night, she poured another glass of wine, her third. Her reflection in the window looked like someone she didn't recognize anymore. "This is your fault," she whispered to herself. "You brought this on." She picked up her phone, scrolling to Chloe's number, then hesitated. She typed a message, "Please come home. I need you." Then deleted it before sending another vibration, another message, unknown number. "Confess before it's too late." Her hands shook. She typed back, "Who is this? What do you want from me?" No reply. The clock read 11:43 p.m. when she heard the front gate creak open. She froze, staring toward the window. A figure moved past the hedge, tall, slow, deliberate. Elaine grabbed the letter opener from her desk, her pulse racing. The porch light flickered on by itself, then off. Then on again. She whispered, "Evan?" But the figure didn't answer. It turned its head, and she swore for a second it looked like Chloe. Then the shadow vanished. Elaine stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the rug. She pressed herself against the wall, whispering through trembling lips, "What do you want from me?" No response. Only the sound of rain beginning to fall again, tapping softly against the glass like fingers. On the floor, her phone buzzed one last time. A new message, no number. No contact name, just 6 words. "You can't call for help anymore." The morning sun rose pale over Maplewood, turning the mist above the river into silver smoke. Elaine's car sat parked by the bridge, driver's door open, engine still running. Inside, her purse, phone, and keys were untouched, but Elaine was gone. Detective Harris arrived just after 7 a.m., a man known for his calm presence and his unshakable sense that nothing was ever as it seemed. He looked at the car, then at the slow-moving river below. Something didn't fit. No sign of a struggle. No footprints leading to the water, just absence. By noon, news had spread across Maplewood. "Local woman missing," the headlines read. "Police suspect foul play." Chloe saw it on her phone while sitting in her apartment 2 towns away. She hadn't spoken to her mother in nearly a week. Her coffee went cold in her hands as she whispered, "Mom." When she finally called the police, they told her what little they knew. The words abandoned vehicle and possible suicide echoed in her ears, but she didn't believe it. Not Elaine. She packed her things and drove home. The house looked different now. Hollow, stripped of warmth. The couch cushions were torn open, papers scattered across the floor. Elaine's journal sat on the kitchen counter, open to a new entry written in frantic, uneven handwriting. "I can't sleep. The calls won't stop. Someone knows." "Someone always knows." Chloe's hands trembled as she read. Guilt crawled through her chest. The last thing she'd said to her mother had been cruel. Words thrown in anger. "Never meant to be final," she whispered. "I'm sorry." "Mom," her voice breaking. Detective Harris entered quietly behind her. "Miss Turner? You shouldn't be here alone." Chloe looked up. "Did she leave a note?" He shook his head. "Just this journal. But there's something else." He handed her a small evidence bag. Inside was a folded photograph found in the car. It showed Chloe and Evan at their engagement dinner. Elaine was in the background, smiling. Across the photo, written in thick black marker, "One of you will pay." Chloe's throat went dry. "Who would do this?" Harris studied her face. "That's what we're trying to find out. But whoever it is, they knew your family well." That night, Chloe stayed in her old bedroom, unable to sleep. Every creak in the house felt like footsteps. She could almost feel her mother's presence, not comforting, but restless, like unfinished business. In the hallway, she noticed something odd. The attic door slightly ajar. A faint draft slipped through the crack, carrying the scent of rain and something metallic. Chloe climbed the steps slowly, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Boxes, dust, old photo albums, nothing unusual. But then she saw it. Pinned to the far wall with a rusted nail was another photo. This one of Elaine, taken through the same living room window as before. And below it, written in the same red ink, "She knows the truth." Chloe's breath hitched. She stumbled back, heart hammering. "Mom, what did you do?" Downstairs, a sudden noise shattered the silence, the sound of a door slamming. Chloe ran down, but the front door was wide open, swinging in the wind. Outside, in the glow of the street lamp, a shadow lingered by the edge of the yard, a tall figure standing still, watching her. "Who's there?" she shouted. No answer. The figure turned and vanished into the fog. Chloe stood frozen, her mother's last words in her head. "Some truths only make things worse," she whispered into the emptiness. "Mom." "What truth?" Rain returned to Maplewood the next morning, heavier than before, turning the quiet streets into rivers of gray. Detective Harris stepped out of his car, coat soaked, shoes splashing through puddles as he made his way to the Turner residence. Inside, Chloe sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes swollen from tears and sleeplessness. She looked up as he entered. "Did you find her?" Harris hesitated. "We found something." He set a sealed evidence bag on the table. Inside was a piece of torn fabric, stained dark. "It was caught on a tree branch by the river," he said quietly. "Matches the blouse your mother was last seen wearing." Chloe's breath caught. "So she's—" He shook his head. "Not yet. But we're treating this as a possible homicide now." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the framed family photos on the wall, snapshots of happier years now drenched in tragedy. Chloe whispered, "Someone was watching her. She told me once that the house didn't feel safe anymore." Harris nodded. "We pulled her phone records. There were multiple calls from disconnected numbers, but one stood out, a burner phone registered under a false name." "Whose name?" "Evan Brooks." The room fell silent. Chloe stared at him, shaking her head. "No, that's impossible. Evan left town days ago." Harris leaned forward. "Did he? We checked his apartment." "He never boarded that flight to Chicago. His car's still here, abandoned at a motel near Route 19. Thunder cracked outside, shaking the windows. Chloe's voice trembled. "You think he did this?" Harris didn't answer directly. "Let's just say Evan had reasons to want your mother gone." Chloe's chest tightened. The betrayal she'd tried to bury came rushing back. Her fiancé and her mother, the secret affair, the humiliation. She whispered, "He ruined everything." But she didn't deserve this. The storm outside grew louder, wind howling against the windows. A power surge flickered the lights, casting long, jagged shadows across the room. Harris stood. "I'm stationing a patrol car outside tonight, just in case." "Just in case of what?" He looked at her grimly. "Whoever's behind this might not be finished." After he left, Chloe wandered through the darkened house, the sound of rain following her from room to room. In her mother's bedroom, the scent of Elaine's perfume still lingered, faint, ghost-like. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the mirror across from her. That's when she noticed it. Faint fingerprints on the glass. Fresh. Too fresh. Her pulse quickened. She wiped at them, but they didn't smear. They were on the inside of the mirror. She stumbled back, heart pounding, when suddenly her phone buzzed. Unknown number. With trembling fingers, she answered. "Hello?" Static. Then a whisper. A woman's voice. "Chloe." Her breath hitched. "Mom?" The line crackled. The voice came again, distant, almost drowned by the storm. "He's not who you think he is." Then silence. The call ended. Chloe stood frozen, staring at her phone screen. Her reflection in the black glass stared back, pale, terrified. Outside, a figure moved past the window, just a blur against the lightning flash. She ran to the door, yanked it open. The rain lashed her face, the wind howled, but the yard was empty. The storm raged harder now, as if the whole town was being swallowed by it. Somewhere beyond the trees, a car engine started, and then cut off. Chloe whispered into the night, "Mom, if you're out there, please tell me what's happening." But only the thunder answered. The storm had passed by dawn, but Maplewood looked different. Washed out, quiet, almost haunted. Branches littered the roads, gutters overflowed, and the air smelled of wet soil and electricity. Detective Harris arrived back at the Turner house just as the sun struggled through gray clouds. Chloe waited on the porch, still wearing the same clothes from the night before, her hair damp, eyes hollow. "You said there was something you found?" Harris asked gently. She nodded, handing him a folded piece of paper, edges soaked and wrinkled from the rain. "It was stuck to the front door this morning," she said. "I didn't touch it. I thought you should see it first." Harris opened the note carefully, revealing words scrawled in black ink, shaky, uneven, desperate. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Forgive me." Harris frowned. "You think that's your mother's handwriting?" Chloe shook her head. "No, but it could be Evan's." The detective studied it in silence, the sound of dripping water filling the space between them. "We'll get it analyzed," he said finally. "But if this is Evan's, it changes things." Chloe stared out toward the wet street. "You think he killed her?" Harris's voice stayed calm. "Right now, I think someone wants us to believe that." Inside the house, the floorboards still creaked from the storm's humidity. Harris's team combed through rooms, collecting fingerprints, photographing the desk, checking the attic again. Everything felt ordinary. Until one officer called out, "Detective, you'll want to see this." Behind the washing machine, tucked beneath a pile of old towels, they found another note. Smaller, written in a different hand. "He made me choose. No signature. Just those 4 words. Chloe's face went pale. She wrote that. I know she did. Harris exhaled. If that's true, then your mother wasn't running. She was afraid. Outside, the rain began again, light this time, tapping softly against the windows like a memory that refused to fade. As Harris sealed the notes into evidence bags, his phone buzzed. It was dispatch. Detective, we've got something. A local fisherman found a bag by the riverbank. Belongs to Elaine Turner. Within the hour, Harris and Chloe were standing near the edge of the water, boots sinking into the mud. The evidence tech opened the waterlogged handbag carefully. Inside were the essentials: wallet, lipstick, a broken phone screen, and something else, a small photograph. Elaine and Chloe taken years ago at a carnival, laughing, happy, carefree. But on the back, written in black marker, were the same words again. You can't hide what you did. Chloe whispered, why does this keep coming back? Harris stared at the photo, rain dripping from his hat. Because someone wants to remind us, this isn't over. The clouds thickened again, thunder rumbling faintly in the distance. Chloe turned to him, her voice shaking. Detective, what if my mother didn't write that first note? He looked at her. Then someone's framing both of them, she swallowed hard. But why? Harris didn't answer. He just looked back toward the river, where the current carried branches, leaves, and something else. A small, pale shape caught in the reeds. An officer waded in, his face going white. Detective, we've got something here! Chloe's heart stopped. Harris motioned her back, but she saw it before anyone could stop her. A woman's hand, delicate, familiar, drifting just below the surface. The river had finally given something back. By nightfall, the riverbank was a blur of flashing lights, yellow tape, and whispers. Elaine Turner's body had been found, but the discovery only deepened the mystery. Her face was pale, her features almost peaceful, but the bruises along her wrists told another story. Detective Harris stood silently as the coroner zipped the body bag. Rain still fell in thin sheets, mixing with the ripples on the water. Chloe watched from the car, her hands trembling against the window. She hadn't cried yet. Not really. It was as if her mind refused to accept that her mother was truly gone. The notes, the storm, the fear, all of it blurred into a single unbearable silence. Harris approached her slowly. We found a ring, he said. It wasn't on her finger. It was in her pocket. Chloe blinked. A ring? He nodded. An engagement ring. Inscribed with initials, E.T. and D.H. Her breath caught. Daniel? Daniel Hayes, her mother's fiancé. He'd been out of town when Elaine went missing, or so he'd claimed. A wealthy contractor, charming on the surface, but Harris had always found his calmness a little too polished. Where is he now? Chloe asked. We've already called him in for questioning, Harris said. He's on his way. The next hour felt endless. When Daniel finally arrived, his expensive coat was soaked, his expression carefully composed. He looked at Chloe first, eyes full of something between pity and performance. I came as soon as I heard, he said softly. Chloe, I'm so sorry. Harris motioned toward the table in the small interview room. Sit down, Mr. Hayes. We need to talk about Elaine. Daniel folded his hands, eyes darting briefly to the evidence bag on the desk, the ring inside glinting faintly under the light. That ring, Harris began, was found in Elaine's pocket. Care to explain why? Daniel hesitated, then exhaled. She called off the engagement a week before she disappeared. She said she needed time to think. I didn't want to pressure her. Harris leaned forward. Funny. Her daughter said she never mentioned that. She wouldn't, Daniel replied. Elaine was private about those things. There was a pause. Harris studied his face, every twitch, every flicker of emotion. Where were you the night she went missing? At a client meeting in Denver, Daniel said quickly. You can check the flight logs. Harris already had. We did, he said, voice low. You left Denver earlier than scheduled, arrived back in town the night Elaine disappeared. Daniel's jaw tightened. That doesn't mean anything. Harris slid another photo across the table. A traffic camera still showing Daniel's car near the Turner home. Time-stamped 10:47 p.m. It means, Harris said quietly. You were there. Daniel's composure cracked for the first time. She called me that night, he said suddenly. She sounded scared. She said someone was outside the house, watching her. I drove over to check, but she wouldn't let me in. She yelled at me to go. Why didn't you tell us that earlier? Because I didn't want to become your suspect. He snapped. Silence filled the room again. Harris stared at him. You're not my suspect, Mr. Hayes, he said finally. At least not yet. Daniel's gaze dropped to the table. She was hiding something, he whispered. Something about Evan. She said if anything happened to her, he'd be the one to blame. Outside the interrogation room, Chloe watched through the glass, her heart twisting. She remembered her mother's last voicemail, the fear in her voice, the broken sob halfway through her sentence. And now, hearing Daniel's words, nothing made sense anymore. Harris closed the file. Thank you for your time, he said. Don't leave town. As Daniel left, Chloe stepped forward. Did you love her? He stopped, his expression unreadable. More than she ever believed. And then he was gone, his reflection vanishing into the rain-soaked glass. Harris looked at Chloe. Whatever he's hiding, he said, we'll find it. But as they turned to leave, an officer rushed in holding a small plastic bag. Detective, we found this in Daniel's car trunk. Inside the bag was a blood-stained scarf, Elaine's initials embroidered in the corner. The interrogation room smelled of metal and rain. Daniel sat across from Detective Harris again, his hands trembling slightly, his knuckles pale. On the table lay the evidence bag, the blood-stained scarf, the faint embroidery of Elaine's initials still visible beneath the crimson blotches. You found that in my trunk? Daniel said, his voice barely a whisper. That's impossible. Harris didn't respond immediately. He wanted Daniel to fill the silence. Silence always did the work for him. I didn't kill her, Daniel continued, his voice rising. You have to believe me. Someone's setting me up. Then explain, Harris said calmly. Why would Elaine's blood be in your car? Daniel pressed his palms to his forehead. Because she was bleeding the night I saw her. She cut her hand. She was panicked, shaking. I gave her a towel from the car. She must have dropped the scarf in. It was plausible, but too neat. Harris had seen real panic before, and this wasn't it. Daniel's words sounded rehearsed, like a story he'd practiced in his head all night. You said she was afraid of someone, Harris reminded him. Who? Daniel looked up slowly. Evan, he said. Her ex-husband. The name hit the air like a gunshot. Chloe, listening from the observation room, felt her throat tighten. Her father had been out of their lives for nearly a decade. Angry, unpredictable, and vengeful after Elaine left him. You're saying Evan came back after 10 years? Harris asked skeptically. He called her, Daniel said quickly. I heard him once. He threatened her. She didn't tell Chloe because she didn't want her to panic. She was terrified. Harris studied him. Did you report it? No, Daniel admitted. She begged me not to. She said she could handle it. It was the kind of answer that sounded sincere, until you listened too closely. Something in Daniel's tone shifted when he said her name, almost like regret mixed with control. Harris leaned back. Funny thing, Mr. Hayes, he said, flipping open a folder. We checked your financials. A week before Elaine's death, she wired $50,000 to an account under your name. Daniel froze. That was for your business investment, right? Harris finished. Except the account was closed 2 days later. Money withdrawn in cash. Daniel's lips parted, but no sound came out. You said you loved her, Harris said, voice sharpening. So why take her money and vanish the same week she died? Daniel's face twisted. Because she told me to. She wanted it gone. She said it wasn't safe in her account anymore. The lie cracked mid-sentence. Harris saw it. The small twitch near Daniel's eye, the slight tremor in his fingers. You're lying, Harris said quietly. Daniel's calm exterior crumbled. His breathing quickened. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he whispered. Then tell me what did happen, Harris pressed. Daniel lowered his gaze. I went back to her house that night. She asked me to. She was crying, terrified. Said someone was watching from the woods. When I got there, she pushed me away. She told me it was over, that she'd ruined everything. He paused, voice shaking. I grabbed her arm, just to stop her from leaving. She slipped. She hit her head on the counter. I panicked. I thought she was dead. The room went cold. Chloe gasped behind the glass, her nails digging into her palms. So you're saying it was an accident? Harris asked, voice low. Daniel nodded weakly. I didn't mean to hurt her. Harris leaned forward. And the river? The scarf? The missing phone calls? You call those accidents too? Daniel looked up, eyes wet. I didn't put her in the river. For a brief moment, Harris almost believed him. Almost. Because there was something raw in his tone. A flash of real confusion or maybe fear. Then who did? Harris asked. Daniel shook his head slowly. You'll find out, he whispered. But when you do, you'll wish you hadn't. The lights flickered, thunder rolling faintly outside as if the world itself was holding its breath. Harris stared at him, a man who had confessed and yet confessed to nothing at all. He pressed the intercom. Take him back to holding. As officers led Daniel away, Chloe stepped into the room. Was that a confession? She asked. Harris looked at the empty chair, the blood-stained scarf still lying there. No, he said softly. That was a performance. But deep down he knew. Performances often hid the truest confessions of all. Chloe didn't sleep that night. Daniel's words haunted her. You'll wish you hadn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face, the fear behind her smile, the river swallowing her reflection. Morning sunlight bled through the curtains when she finally rose. The house felt colder than before, emptier. On the kitchen counter sat a worn, leather-bound journal she'd retrieved from Elaine's nightstand the day before. The first page was dated 2 months earlier. If anything happens to me, don't trust the past. It's not finished with us. Chloe's hands trembled as she flipped the pages. Most of the entries were short, almost cryptic, fragments of a woman unraveling. He called again. Daniel doesn't know everything. Evan said it's time I tell the truth. Her pulse quickened. Her father, Evan Turner, the name Daniel had dropped like a bomb. He hadn't been part of their lives since she was 16. An alcoholic. A man with a temper sharp enough to cut through love. The last time she'd seen him, he was screaming in their driveway as police pulled him away. And now, somehow, his name was back, tied to Elaine's death. Chloe grabbed her coat and keys. She had to find him. Evan lived on the outskirts of town in a rusted trailer surrounded by weeds and silence. When she knocked, it took almost a full minute before the door creaked open. He looked older, thinner, eyes sunken, hands trembling slightly. Chloe, he said, disbelief in his tone. You look just like your mother. We need to talk, she said coldly. Inside, the air smelled of old coffee and cigarettes. Stacks of unopened mail lined the counter, and a single framed photo of Elaine rested on the table, cracked glass across her smile. You've heard, he muttered. About Elaine, Chloe nodded. They found her body in the river. He sat down slowly, rubbing his face. I told her this would happen. I told her to stay away from him. From who? Daniel? He looked up sharply. You think he's the danger? No, your mother. She was in deep. She had secrets even I couldn't protect her from. Chloe's voice shook. You threatened her, didn't you? She wrote about you in her journal. Evan's expression darkened. She made me the villain so she could hide the truth. She didn't just cheat on me, Chloe. She destroyed everything we built. She stole money, forged documents, and framed me for it. Chloe froze. That's not true. It is, he said bitterly. The day she left, she promised she'd never tell anyone why. But she couldn't keep her lies forever. Someone found out. Who? He looked at her with hollow eyes. Daniel. Chloe's stomach dropped. Daniel? Evan nodded. He wasn't just her fiancé. He was her insurance. She thought she could trust him with the truth. But Daniel wasn't the man he claimed to be. He worked for the people she stole from in laundering money, tying up her mess. The words struck like cold wind. You're lying, Chloe whispered. Evan leaned forward. Then ask him about the offshore accounts. About the $50,000 she sent him right before she died. Ask him why he needed her gone once the truth came out. Chloe's head spun. It didn't make sense. Or maybe it made too much sense. She turned toward the door, but Evan's voice stopped her. "Chloe," he said quietly. "Your mother called me the night she died." She froze. "What?" "She said she was going to confess everything. To the police, to you, to Daniel. Said she couldn't live with the guilt anymore. I told her to be careful." I never heard from her again. For the first time, Evan's eyes filled with tears. "I loved her. Even after everything, I still did." Chloe stepped outside, the weight of the revelation crushing her chest. The wind howled through the fields as she clutched the journal to her heart. Behind her, Evan watched from the doorway, his silhouette dark against the gray light. He whispered softly to himself, words she couldn't hear, before closing the door with a slow, final click. The drive back to town felt endless. Rain streaked across the windshield, turning the world outside into a blur of gray and ghostly reflections. Chloe's hands gripped the wheel, her mother's journal open on the passenger seat. The one thing connecting the lies to the truth. Evan's voice still echoed in her head. "She stole from the wrong people. Daniel was one of them." But part of her refused to believe it. Daniel had flaws, charm laced with secrets. But a killer? That didn't fit, and yet, neither had her mother's death. When she pulled up to Daniel's apartment, the front door was wide open. Her heart lurched. Inside, the place was a mess. Drawers yanked open, papers scattered like confetti after a storm. The air smelled faintly of cologne and metal. "Daniel?" she called out. Silence. Then from the desk, she saw it, a single sheet of paper weighed down by a ring. The same engagement ring the police had found in Elaine's pocket. Chloe picked up the note. It was Daniel's handwriting, shaky and smeared by raindrops. "If you're reading this, it means they know. I never meant to hurt her. But Elaine was never who she said she was. She made me believe we could start over, that we could escape it. But no one escapes people like them." At the bottom, a final line. "Check her journal. The last page will tell you why she had to die." Chloe's pulse thundered in her ears. She fumbled through the journal, flipping to the final entry. The ink was faded, but the words were clear, deliberate. "Daniel found out. About the money. About the files. I thought I could fix this, but it's too late. If anything happens to me, tell Chloe to forgive him. He didn't kill me, but he will die for me." Her breath caught. A car engine roared outside. Chloe ran to the window. Daniel's black sedan screeched away from the curb. She grabbed her coat and followed, her headlights slicing through the storm as she trailed him down the narrow, winding roads leading out of Maplewood. He stopped at the old bridge, the same one overlooking the river where Elaine's body had been found. Rain poured in sheets now, thunder echoing through the valley. Daniel stood at the railing, soaked to the bone, staring into the black water. "Don't come any closer, Chloe," he said without turning. "You lied to me!" she shouted over the rain. "You said you loved her." He laughed bitterly. "I did. That's why I kept her secret." "What secret?" Daniel turned, eyes hollow. "Elaine didn't steal that money, Chloe. She was hiding it for someone else. For your father." The words hit like a lightning strike. "No," she whispered. "He told me." "He lied," Daniel interrupted. "He framed her when his old partners came looking for the cash. She took the blame to protect you." "I found out too late." Tears blurred her vision. "So why run? Why let everyone think you killed her?" Daniel stepped closer, rain streaming down his face. "Because I did, Chloe. Not with my hands, but with what I didn't stop." He swallowed hard. "She begged me to walk away. I didn't. I thought love could fix the damage, but it only buried her deeper." Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. "Daniel, please," Chloe whispered. "Let them hear your side." He smiled faintly. "Some stories don't get clean endings." Before she could reach him, Daniel slipped his ring into her hand. Cold, heavy, final. "Tell them she was innocent." Then he stepped backward into the darkness below. Chloe screamed, her voice lost in the rain. Officers arrived minutes later, flashlights cutting through the mist. But the river had already swallowed him. Days later, at the station, Detective Harris handed her the final evidence report. No trace of Daniel's body was ever found. As she left, she opened her mother's journal one last time. The last line, one she hadn't noticed before, stared back at her like a whisper from beyond. The truth doesn't die with the guilty. It hides with the ones who survive. Chloe closed the journal slowly. Outside, the river glistened under the morning light, calm, deceptively peaceful. For the first time, she understood why her mother had written it. Because some secrets don't end, they just change hands.